Give me 56 minutes of your attention, and I won't promise you magic, luck, or miracles. I won't sell you shortcuts or illusions. What I will give you is something far more dangerous to debt than money itself. I will give you a shift so deep it rearranges the way you think, the way you decide, the way you act when no one is watching. And when that shift happens, debt can no longer survive in your life. Because debt is not defeated by dollars. It is defeated by identity. Most people believe debt is a numbers problem. They think it lives on paper, in statements, in interest rates, in bills that arrive like quiet threats in the mailbox. But debt is born long before the bill arrives. It is conceived in the mind. Inside habits of delay, in borrowed confidence, in the belief that tomorrow will somehow be richer than today without requiring a different version of self. Napoleon Hill warned us of this without ever using the word credit card. He said poverty is not a lack of money. It is a lack of definiteness of purpose. Look closely at the lives of those buried under debt, and you will not find bad people. You will find unfocused energy, scattered desire, 1,000 wants pulling in 1,000 directions, with no commanding vision strong enough to say no to the unnecessary and yes to the essential. Debt feeds on confusion. It thrives where clarity is absent. Think of Thomas Edison in his laboratory, bankrupt more times than history books bother to mention. He was surrounded by financial failure, yet never imprisoned by it. Why? Because his mind was not rented to circumstance. He knew exactly who he was becoming. Debt cannot chain a man who knows where he is going. It can only delay those who do not. Right now, as you listen, there is a quiet voice inside you that already knows this is true. It knows that your financial reality is not a verdict. It is feedback, a signal, a mirror. And mirrors do not argue. They simply reflect. The moment you stop asking, how do I pay this off? And start asking, who must I become so this never happens again? The war changes direction. That is the moment debt begins to retreat. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose, but today we might call it a financial spine. A core so strong that impulse cannot bend it. A vision so vivid that temporary pleasure feels small compared to long-term freedom. Andrew Carnegie did not build steel by accident. He built it by obsession. He knew exactly what he wanted, and everything else bowed to that clarity, including money. Debt is what happens when money has a plan for you instead of you having a plan for money. Most people drift. Hill said drifting is the most dangerous habit known to man because it feels harmless. Drifting doesn't announce itself with sirens. It whispers, just this once. It says you deserve it. It promises relief without responsibility. And over time, drifting builds a life where money is always leaving faster than it arrives. But the non-drifter, the man or woman who decides, lives by a different rhythm. They do not wait for motivation. They do not wait for perfect timing. They act from decision, not emotion. This is where debt begins to suffocate, because debt requires indecision to breathe. Look at Henry Ford. Before he had factories, before he had capital, he had a decision so firm it bordered on madness. When bankers laughed at him, he didn't argue. He adjusted. When engines failed, he refined. His mind was locked onto a single outcome. Money eventually followed, because money is a servant to certainty. Your debt is not asking for your fear. It is asking for your leadership. The moment you decide, truly decide, that you are no longer the person who reacts, the person who delays, the person who numbs discomfort with spending, you step into a new role. You become the architect instead of the victim. And architects do not panic when construction gets messy. They follow the blueprint. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect in action. Every time you choose order over chaos, intention over impulse, you are telling your subconscious, I am someone who can be trusted. And the subconscious, once convinced, begins to align behavior, opportunity, and focus in your favor. Debt weakens when self-trust strengthens. Walt Disney was once told he lacked imagination. He was bankrupt, humiliated, and dismissed. But he guarded one thing more fiercely than money: his vision. While others counted what they lacked, he counted what he was building. That inner picture pulled resources toward him like gravity. Not overnight, not effortlessly, but inevitably. You do not erase debt by hating it. You erase it by outgrowing it. Gratitude plays a role here that few understand. Gratitude is not passive acceptance. It is mental stability. A grateful mind is not desperate, and desperation leads to bad financial decisions. Quick fixes, high interest, borrowed confidence. Gratitude grounds you long enough to act strategically instead of emotionally. And strategy requires patience. Lincoln failed in business before he led a nation. Had he measured his worth by his bank balance, history would be silent. Instead, he measured himself by his commitment to growth. He studied. He reflected. He adapted. Debt fears the person who learns, because learning multiplies leverage. Every book you read, every skill you sharpen, every hour you invest in competence increases your earning power more reliably than any lottery ticket ever could. Hill called this the habit of going the extra mile, the quiet decision to become more valuable than your current environment requires. Debt shrinks in the presence of value. As this awareness settles in, something subtle begins to happen. You stop seeing money as relief and start seeing it as responsibility. You stop chasing appearance and start building substance. You understand that freedom is not what you buy. It is what you no longer need to buy to feel whole. And once that shift locks in, the math begins to change. Not because the world suddenly becomes fair, but because you become focused. Stay here. Let this sink deeper. The transformation has already begun.